62, Plath writes, what the person out of Belsen, physical or psychological, wants is nobody saying the body still go tweet, but the full knowledge that somebody else has been there and knows the worst, just what it is like. So that is how she was feeling, in those months in London, alone in a flat with two very young children, separated from her husband, going through all kinds of, starting from financial to psychological, all kinds of hardships. And again, in a letter, she tells her mother that there is a burst in her creativity. She is writing frantically, and which is evident from her papers, which were collected after her death and arranged and published in the anthology called the Erewhon. Now, Plath was of German descent. Her father, Otto Plath, was born in Poland, moved to the United States, taught in college. Her mother, Aurelia, was actually a student of her father. And there are biographical details to suggest that Plath did not actually enjoy a very warm relationship with her mother. Her father died very young, when she was only 8 years old, died young. And her relationship with her father is also troubled. Troubled not because, trouble not going out of personal contact, because she was very young when the father died. But whatever she remembered of him, and of more importantly, the way she looked up to him, and she felt completely betrayed and devastated when the father died, because in her childish imagination, the father was a very tall figure, invincible. How can he die? And it was almost a betrayal that he died and left her orphaned. So that was again a very troubled relationship with her father. That is in imagination, and in real life the trouble was there with her mother. She had trouble in her relationship with her husband, and throughout these two poems you will find that there is a figure of man who is an oppressor. Whether that is the father, whether that is the husband, they are oppressors. And she revolts against them, rebels against them, tries to fight it out, and finally declares that after her death she will be resurrected just like a phoenix, and she will eat up all men. And you see, in Plath's poem also, you will find certain references, images, which are rather violent. One thing I would like to remind you, that Plath belonged to a school of poets who called themselves confessional poets. The idea was writing poetry is like catharsis. Whatever is cooked up in your mind, you give vent to it in your poems. So it's the image, the metaphor that was being used is this poetry is raw, and other kind of poetry, they are cooked, by which is meant that cooking is you add things to it, you process it. So finished poetry of other kinds, these are like cooked food, and confessional poetry is like raw food, which is not true. Because even Plath's paper will show you how she worked on the first draft. So she was also serving cooked food. And if we go 200 years back, the same thing is applicable to Wordsworth. everybody worked on their poems. Everything was considered twice, thrice, made corrections. They made corrections, they added, they deleted. So finally, what they presented was what they considered to be a finished product. So there is no reason to believe that the very disturbing, violent images that Plath uses in her poetry is actually raw expression bursting out of our very troubled consciousness. It can as well be deliberate, because that was her idea, how to disturb people. Because one way of making your poetry get across to readers is to shake them violently, disturb them, so that they don't forget what they have already read. They keep on coming back to it and try to make sense of it. So I really don't know which poem was written earlier, so I'm not maintaining chronology. I start talking about Lady Lazarus. Anirban, what's the time limit? Hello?
You can continue for 15 minutes.
15 more minutes. Okay. So you are all familiar with the biblical figure Lazarus, who was dead for 3 days and brought back to life. So it's basically resurrected. The poetic persona in this poem is Lady Lazarus, so a woman who has been resurrected from death. If you remember the details of Plath's biography, that she attempted suicide, she herself says, once in every decade. So at the age of 10, she was washed away in the sea. Whether that was deliberate or not, there is no agreement of opinion. But at 20, she tried to commit suicide, and in 30, she was successful in committing suicide. So she is troubled. She knows that she has that tendency in her, which goads her to the thought of suicide and at least attempt at it. So the very first line refers to it. I have done it again. 1 year in